House Ethics Panel finds Representative Chuck Edwards likely violated sexual harassment rules. Courthouse News, the New York Times, NPR, and NBC News all point to the House Ethics Committee as the record that matters now. The outlets describe a panel recommendation for censure after allegations that Edwards gave gifts to staff members and made unwanted romantic advances. So the practical question is what the House does with that recommendation. The key distinction is that this is not a criminal verdict. It is an ethics process inside Congress, with consequences that depend on votes, committee documents, and any public response from Edwards or House leaders. The immediate watch item for Story 1 is the next posted committee record, floor schedule, or statement from congressional leadership. If the matter advances, look for language that says whether censure, workplace restrictions, or another remedy is actually being considered. Until then, the durable fact is the panel finding and recommendation described by multiple news organizations, not any unsourced claim about the final outcome. This also affects Capitol Hill workplace standards because members, aides, and party leaders will read the House response as guidance for future conduct complaints. A formal floor action would make the finding more than a committee document and create a public benchmark for similar allegations inside congressional offices. Trump administration sued by 25 states over new tariffs on trading partners. Reuters, Al Jazeera, The Guardian, and CNBC describe a legal challenge from Democratic-led states against the administration's latest tariff program. The case matters because tariffs can affect import costs, state budgets, business planning, and talks with trading partners before consumers see the full price effect. The immediate issue is whether a court pauses any part of the policy, asks for more briefing, or leaves customs officials to keep applying the duties while litigation moves. For households and businesses, the signal to watch is not campaign language. It is a filing, injunction order, customs notice, or formal negotiating text that changes what importers must do. Story 2 also has an international angle, because European and other trade responses may depend on whether the U.S. measure looks temporary or durable. The next useful update should identify the court, the deadline, and whether any tariff collection changes in practice. If judges move quickly, companies may update invoices, supply contracts, and price guidance before the broader political fight is resolved. State attorneys general will also use early orders to decide whether to seek broader relief or narrow the case around particular products and agencies. Importers, retailers, and ports need that clarity because tariff liability can alter shipment timing, contracts, and cash flow within days. Supreme Court won't halt $656 million judgment against the PLO and Palestinian Authority. Courthouse News, Reuters, PBS, and the Times of Israel report that the justices declined to pause a large judgment connected to attacks involving American victims. That means the legal fight continues with the existing award still in force unless a later court action changes enforcement. The viewer takeaway is procedural but important. A refused pause is not the same as a full merits ruling, yet it can shift leverage because money, appeals strategy, and diplomatic pressure move around the active order. Watch next for lower court filings, enforcement steps, or a Justice Department position that clarifies how the judgment can be collected. Story 3 also sits in a sensitive foreign policy space, so the clean read is to separate the court record from political reaction. The durable fact today is that the requested stay did not arrive, leaving the judgment as the operative legal reality. Any next filing should show whether the parties seek another route, negotiate payment terms, or challenge enforcement mechanics. Victims' families, Palestinian officials, and diplomats will all be watching the same docket because enforcement details can change bargaining power quickly. Any escrow order, asset dispute, or collection schedule would turn the headline from legal status into immediate financial pressure for both sides. Washington wildfires destroy homes, force thousands to evacuate. NPR, NBC News, and 41 NBC describe fires around Spokane that have destroyed structures and pushed large evacuation orders as crews work through dangerous conditions. Spokane Mayor Lisa Brown said nearly half of the city's neighborhoods had either been evacuated or were at risk, while NBC cited more than 700 structures lost and about 65,000 people under evacuation. The immediate need is practical. Residents should follow Spokane County emergency alerts, shelter information, road closures, and air quality guidance rather than social posts with uncertain timing. For everyone outside the region, the broader signal is whether wind, containment, and utility damage make the emergency expand or stabilize. Story 4's next check is an official incident update from fire managers, city officials, or local emergency offices. A meaningful update should say which zones reopen, which remain under order, and whether damage counts have changed. The public consequence reaches schools, hospitals, insurers, and power crews, so recovery may continue well after flames are contained. Red Cross shelter counts and state emergency declarations would show how many evacuees still need help tonight. If weather shifts, the most important record will be a new evacuation map with timestamps and named neighborhoods. plus county instructions on returns, shelters, pets, medication, and smoke exposure. Exclusive, Fed's Williams expects inflation to ease, says Fed will act if it doesn't. Reuters, The Economic Times, International Business Times, and Quartz track comments from New York Federal Reserve President John Williams saying inflation is expected to cool, while policymakers remain prepared to respond if it does not. That matters because Williams is part of the Fed system, and his comments help investors interpret how officials are weighing prices, jobs, and interest rate risk. The practical takeaway is conditional. The central bank is not promising relief on a fixed date, but it is signaling that incoming inflation data still drive the path. Watch the next consumer price report, Fed meeting statement, and speeches that explain whether price pressure is narrowing or spreading. Story 5 is especially relevant for borrowers, savers, and markets because rate expectations can move before any formal vote. The cleanest update will be a dated Fed document or data release, not a market rumor. If inflation cools slowly, officials may keep policy tighter for longer despite pressure for cuts. Bond yields, mortgage rates, and bank stocks can all react before households feel the policy shift directly. Traders will compare Williams's language with other Fed speakers to see whether the committee sounds unified or divided before the next policy meeting and vote decision. Amazon tops $3 trillion market cap as stock continues post-earnings surge. CNBC, International Business Times, The Times, and Seeking Alpha connect the milestone to a post-earnings rally and investor enthusiasm around cloud demand and artificial intelligence. A market cap number is not cash in the bank, but it signals how investors value Amazon's future profits after the latest results. The viewer question is whether the move is supported by durable revenue growth at Amazon Web Services, retail margins, and guidance from management. Watch next for analyst revisions, regulatory scrutiny, and the company's next filing, because those records show whether the surge changes expectations or simply reflects a strong trading week. Story 6 also matters for the wider market because a few giant technology firms can carry index performance. The useful follow-up is a formal company filing or earnings update that confirms whether growth assumptions are improving. If cloud demand weakens, the same valuation milestone can quickly become a test of investor patience. Investors will also compare capital spending on AI infrastructure with profit margins in the next quarterly numbers. Regulators and competitors will watch whether Amazon uses the valuation moment to expand cloud capacity, retail logistics, or media deals, and whether that spending protects margins, pricing power, advertising growth, and investor confidence through the next earnings cycle. U.S.-Iran negotiations set to begin Monday, Trump says after calling off strikes. Reuters, CBS News, NBC News, and The Guardian describe competing signals, with Trump saying talks are underway or expected while Tehran denies a planned start. That gap is the story. Diplomatic claims can move markets and security expectations before negotiators confirm the same calendar. The viewer takeaway is to watch for a named venue, named delegation, or official statement from both sides, because those details separate real talks from pressure tactics. Regional risk remains tied to nuclear negotiations, military posture, sanctions, and any response from allied governments. Story 7's next checkpoint is a dated confirmation from U.S. officials, Iranian officials, or mediators that says who is meeting and what agenda is on the table. Until both sides align on the record, treat the diplomacy as contested rather than settled. If talks materialize, the first agenda language will matter more than broad claims about breakthroughs or threats. Oil markets, shipping insurers, and regional militaries may respond first to confirmed schedules, not televised assertions. A mediator statement from Oman, Qatar, Europe, or the United Nations would be stronger evidence than one-sided political remarks, especially if it names the meeting place, timing, delegates, agenda, sanctions issues, nuclear limits, verification terms, ceasefire risks, and security guarantees. Drone explodes on Russian beach, killing 7, officials say. The New York Times, CNN, Saudi Gazette, and South China Morning Post cite Russian accounts that 7 people were killed when a Ukrainian drone hit a crowded beach area. The human consequence is immediate, while the strategic consequence depends on whether Moscow, Kyiv, or outside observers provide more evidence about the target, weapon, and circumstances. The important caution is that wartime casualty claims often change as officials revise numbers and release imagery. Watch next for statements from military authorities, local emergency officials, and independent reporting that confirms the location and toll. Story 8 also matters because attacks affecting civilians can widen diplomatic pressure and shape retaliation narratives. The durable update today is the reported deaths and official Russian description. The next meaningful record should clarify responsibility, verified casualties, and whether the incident changes military or humanitarian actions. If additional footage or hospital counts emerge, they may sharpen the legal and diplomatic stakes around the strike. Humanitarian agencies and local authorities will also watch whether beaches, ports, or nearby transport routes close. The next credible update should distinguish verified deaths, injuries, and damage from claims made for wartime messaging, and should identify whether investigators can inspect the scene, interview witnesses, review hospital records, and verify military debris.